Welcome to the Lobster Talks podcast by Lobster Capital, where we celebrate the bold thinkers and innovators driving change in the startup world. I'm your host, Gabriel Jarrison, and today I'm thrilled. I'm so excited to have Anna Berger in French, to be with us. Anna, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to chat.
I hope you're excited to have a French name now. I've just baptized you. Let's start this simple. Tell us about Trade, what you're building, it's an exciting startup that you're building. So for people who just join us in the show, why should they listen to you? Because you have something very exciting that you're building. Tell us more about what Trade is.
Yeah, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Trade. Trade is a construction payroll platform designed for same-day pay. So we allow the 7 million construction workers in the US to get paid 7 to 10 days sooner than legacy payroll providers like ADP, Paychex, and QuickBooks.
That's awesome. I remember when we first met, you told me something in the lines of, if you work at Uber, if you work at McDonald's, you can get paid the same day. And if you work on a construction site, which is a lot of people, and people who usually for those, let's say, entry jobs, not everyone on a construction site is an entry job, but you have to have the cash, you have to have the money rather sooner than later. But today the system is completely antiquated. What was the realization for you to be like, we can actually do this so much better with today's technology?
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is 600,000 construction workers have left construction to go pursue jobs in the gig economy. So pursuing jobs, as you said, in Uber, at Doordash, because those types of platforms are offering better incentives for retention, like same-day pay. And so you're seeing this pretty staggering job shortage happening in construction. And that's because, fresh out of school, what's the most important thing to someone? It's money, and it's money immediately. And so how do we re-incentivize the workforce? We pay them faster.
That's awesome. Actually, what you're saying is you're helping the labor shortage because you're helping companies attract more people with better pay conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, right? But I make it sound so simple. It's a very hard, tall order we're doing here. But, ultimately we are redefining construction payroll. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be hard. It doesn't need to take a full week of someone's work to process payroll. And it doesn't need to take 10 days for a check to arrive, right? We're just flipping on its head how traditional payroll has been run in construction and reimagining it.
That's awesome. It's such a huge industry, but it's sort of an old industry. It needs to be disrupted. It's ripe for disruption. So that's the introduction. And of course, we're going to dig into some more specific details and all of this. But please, now it's about time. I want to get all the very cool stuff that you're doing in front for the watch time for everybody to be like, wow, this is going to be fascinating. But I'd love to hear more about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself, please, and how your sort of life story brought you to this. I'm not asking you this question specifically because I know you specifically have deep roots in that industry. You're going to tell us about that. I asked this to all the founders of the kind of all the realizations and the moments that brought you to, hey, we should build Trade. So tell us about you and how you came to this.
Yeah. So I'm a daughter of an architect. I've grown up in and around construction my whole life. And so, the initial ideation for Trade really started in my dad's back office and seeing so much inefficiency and wanting to help him, right? It really came from a personal need with my dad, and it kind of grew from there. I started paying close attention to the construction space and really saw so clearly that there's two types of contractors in the world. There's the contractor that has zero tech adoption. They're doing everything on pen and paper with Aunt May in the back office, running payroll the same way she has for 35 years. And then on the other hand, there's this tech curious contractor who wants to move into automation, but based on the tools and software available to them, there's nothing or until now, there hasn't been anything specific to construction. And so they've been forced to adopt tools that aren't specific to their industry. And so you see this Frankenstein back office, right? People using 5 to 7 different software systems to run their day-to-day, none of which are speaking to each other, creating inefficiency and errors. And that especially impacts payroll, right? In order to run perfect payroll in construction, you need full visibility and transparency across time and scheduling data, people management, in order to make a perfect picture. So that's really what we do here.
That's awesome. I mean, you're sort of the textbook definition of going after an antiquated industry that's kind of running on very old software or no software at all, the pen and paper, and going in and coming in with brand new tech to really help them be more efficient. Is this how you, like, does this reflect on your day to day? Is this how you actually live things? Do you talk to customers who still rely on pen and paper? And if yes, because many people are trying to disrupt industries that are not that old. For you, that's really like the cliche of an old industry running on pen and paper. Does it have advantages? Does it have, disadvantages?
I spend most of my days with my customers, right? At this point, right, we've raised capital, we've moved into a different space in terms of like company life cycle. I'm not focused on fundraising anymore. I am now focused solely on my customer. And so I spend all day with these people and it's incredible, right? Every day I wake up and I'm like more invigorated to solve this problem because it is so rampant, especially here in New York City. And that's the beauty of being here. I can walk to my left and walk onto 2 job sites. I can walk to my right and walk onto 4. Building is happening on every corner, which is what makes trade being, homegrown to New York so relevant. But to answer your question, last week I was on a job site downtown in Soho, bordering on the Lower East Side. And the general contractor was giving me a tour. And he brought me down to the basement where there were 40 cabinets in the job site that they specifically bring in to manage all of the manual pen and paper sign-in sheets that are still required by like the DOB. And it's pretty crazy. So this was last week, right? I literally saw like 40 cabinets brought into a job site, right? That are then going to have to be taken out of the job site and brought to another job site just to manage how much paper is still existing. It's crazy. Crazy.
It is. Wow. And is that part of your selling points as well? I'm sure it is. Like, well, wait a minute. We're just going to, obviously, we're going to streamline your operations. Your life is going to be so much easier, faster. You're going to attract more people, but also you don't need to pay for those and have the hassle of spending, instead of starting your first, your first construction starts after 3 days of installing those cabinets. You can start on the first day because you don't need any of those. Is that a big pain for them that you're just taking away?
I mean, maybe, right? Like I think it's part of it, right? It's just like the having to think about where all the paper goes. Like, of course, that is part of the struggle. But when I'm pitching, there are so many, like even sales pitches, there are so many other pieces that ring more true to these contractors, right? They're wasting so much money on so many different systems. They're wasting so much time. They have so many people in the back office that are doing just paper pushing, right? And so I think there are so many pain points that we are aiming to solve here. And the cabinets are one of them.
Yeah, that's funny because I listening to you, I agree. Like, it's interesting that this is actually not even on the highest list of their pains. It sounds like a horrible thing that if you could just remove this, it would actually probably be worth it. But there's actually 15 more things that are even more pressing for you to remove for them as a pain. Yeah. So that's really cool. Can you tell me a little bit about if there was one, but I believe there was. I believe to remember you told me there was some sort of a aha moment for you to be like, wait a minute, we can do this better. I remember you told me a story about a friend of yours who's just had all of these employees, like many of these employees, just leaving for this specific problem. You're like, there's got to be a better way, and got started. Did I get this right? Is it how you kind of started this?
Yeah. So I had, at this point, and I think I know what you're talking about, I had been spending a lot of time with my dad already and hearing from him that there were like a ton of payroll inefficiencies and just errors across the board. At the same time, I met up with my dad and one of his contractors, and we were, having lunch, and the contractor in the same breath was basically explaining that his payroll was messed up 3 or 4 times in a row, right? And there was no one on the other end of the phone to help him. And on the other hand, he was losing guys faster than he could keep up, right? They were leaving like at such a clip that he couldn't replace talent fast enough. And why were they leaving? They were going to drive for Uber to get faster payments. And so in the same breath, it was like everyone's complaining about payroll being broken for construction and workers are leaving because they want faster pay. There's something here, right? And that's kind of that was the light bulb that then became, I'd close my eyes at night and I'd be like envisioning this product on my ceiling. And it became the thing that like kept me up at night, truly, until I could figure out how to crack it.
That's so cool. I love that image of you closing your eyes and having the kind of the vision. And there's also, you were able to share that vision and to convince someone to join you, and someone that was, I think, not looking to work so much, but then she had to go out of retirement for you, something like this. Can you expand on that?
Oh, Kara, yes.
Hi, Kara.
I love that. That's what you remember. Yeah. Yeah, she's right. She's right over there. So yeah, Kara and I have known each other for now 22 years, which is unbelievable. We've known each other since we're almost 10 years old. And we've been through all of like life together, the highs and lows. And we had two very different careers. I was, chasing startup life in my 20s, and she was hunkering down and building at LinkedIn. She went from intern all the way to senior staff over an 8 or 9 year period. And she was at the top of her game, right? She was leading a team of like 250 engineers. But what she had said to me time and again was like, I've stopped building. Like she wasn't building anymore. She was just leading. And she was kind of craving a change. But before she was craving a change, she very much did like an eat, pray, love journey, where she basically quit LinkedIn to go kind of explore. And mind you, it's one of my best friends. I knew what was happening, and I was planning to completely sabotage this. So we, in the summer of 22, we both happened to be in Italy. I was there for a wedding. She was there for a cooking school as part of her Eat, Pray, Love journey. And little did she know I was like gearing up to just completely like poach her. And so we decided to do a road trip together from Cinque Terre all the way to the south of France. It was kind of like a dream trip and a dream backdrop for this conversation, which was like, I'm building this. I have complete and total conviction. Like I have validated this concept for the last 6+ months. I'm doing it. And I really want you to do it with me, right? Like every time I envisioned this product and this journey, it was always with her next to me. And she was like, I'm still chilling. Like I just finished a 9-year run. Like I'm not working yet. And I was like, yeah, you are. Like, no, like you're going to do this with me. And I can be convincing, right? When I want to be. And I don't think she knew she had no choice in the matter, but no, she totally did. But I brought her into the journey, the process, the interviews that I had done, really showing her how big this opportunity was and how the lane is wide open. And when I showed her that and made the actual business case, not just being like, come on, do it with me over Aperol spritzes, she was in. So
that's the last point. The Aperol spritzes, that's the deciding factor.
I can tell you exactly where we were. I remember it so clearly.
That's awesome. So, did you guys take a picture?
Yeah. We do have a picture.
On the day you guys IPO, you can reflect on that picture. But no, it's fascinating to hear the story. And you had told me pieces of it, but this is much, much better, obviously. And listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, this is some convincing that had to happen. This is such a quality for you as one of the founders of this business. I'm thinking to myself, I'm sure you are, I'm hoping Anna is bringing the same game to customers. It seems you could convince anyone of anything, not in a bad way, in a very, very good way. And I think that's a great, great character trait for you. And I mean, for aspiring entrepreneurs listening to us, building a startup is extremely hard. It's extremely harder if you're alone. It's much, much easier to have a co-founder. But one of the first things is to convince that co-founder to take the journey with you. And of course, your convincing skills and the way to bring someone onto your vision is essential. And it's also something you're going to use with your first customers. Your first customers, you need to bring them onto your vision. Hey, listen, we're a small company where this is where we're trying to go, and we'd love to have you for the ride, and sign here and give us some money. It's not easy. People are used to do something. And just, Anna, you just showed us what it takes. And I mean, for me, it's super, super inspiring. It gives me so much faith as well that you're going to bring this energy and this enthusiasm and this sharing the vision to your clients, to your customers, and you're going to be able to sign them. So I just want to say congratulations. I'm glad you did. Just after this, you convinced Y Combinator to let you in as well. Another convincing.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
Yeah, there's been a lot of convincing. There's been a lot of convincing this whole way through, right? You convince your co-founder, you convince your investors. Essentially, like this is an idea that was stardust, right? I was seeing it on my bedroom ceiling. I was dreaming about it. I was validating it, but it only existed here, right? And so then you have to like convince every single person along the way. Mind you, they're going to make you feel like you shouldn't do it. The amount of people that told me, because I got a lot of letters of intent really early on, which helped our like get into Y Combinator, where we didn't have a product going into Y Combinator, but we had letters of intent from people who I had sat down with being like, this is what we want to build. This is where we're going. This is what it could do for your business based on everything you've told me, right? And that was like proof that there was a need and a want for this product. And I still had people, investors or whatnot, and even friends in the industry being like, people are lying to you. That's not actually what they want. They're just being nice, right? They don't want to reject you. I've heard it all, right? And it's like, if you're listening to your customers and you have a trust and a relationship with them and you believe that they're not lying to you, keep going, right? Don't let anybody who is not as close to your customers like tell you to stop. It's and I think that that's the universe pressure testing the idea and the founder's resilience to be like, are they going to keep pushing through all the naysayers? It's incredibly hard to bring an idea from something that doesn't exist to a living, breathing product that people are using.
I mean, it's fascinating. I've seen this so many times play out. I've lived this myself. I actually talk about it in my very first book that I wrote in 2018. People around you are going to push you not to do it, not to build your business. I talk especially about family. My mom, hey mom, didn't want me to start businesses. Yeah. And it's not because, it's actually because she loves me so much. Family doesn't want to see you suffer. And if you don't try anything, you're not going to suffer if you stay with your comfortable job. Now, if you try something, you might fail. And this is going to bring suffering, and this is what your family doesn't want. So it's hard for a family member to say, sure, go ahead and fail and suffer. And it's also hard for us to not listen to them and be like, I'm just going to ignore you because you're not. And again, it's so interesting to me because it happens with every family in the world, and it comes from the right place, but it's always wrong. You have to ignore it. It's really kind of a weird thing.
What I like to do to kind of mitigate that is, because I remember I had pitched, I think we've talked about this, I had pitched 150 times in the spring of 2023. I got 149 no's. I got one yes, and it was Y Combinator.
Wow.
One, right? And it takes one. But when I was sitting at like 147, I remember calling my mom, crying, being like, am I crazy? Like, I'm exhausted. I'm run down. Like, how hard can I like keep convincing and just trying to like push this idea forward? And she was like, I remember her being like, maybe it's time to call it, right? Like maybe it's time. And part of me was like, I hear her. I'm going to set a date for myself where like, I'll put this down. And like that date was like September 30th. It was like 3 months later. I was like, I will keep pushing for 3 more months, right? And then a week later, we got into Y Combinator. So, it's like sometimes it's like set the date for yourself of like, I will push until this point and I will give it my all, right? But it's even your parents that are like, are you sure? Like, do you want to keep putting yourself through this? And it's like, yeah.
No, that's really cool. Actually, setting a date for yourself, I think is awesome. It's something I didn't do with my first business. And it was kind of the other way around. The business was failing. And my dad kept pushing me like, you're going to make it, you're going to make it. And it was just out of love. He was being supportive, where actually the right thing to do was shut the business down. And so I kept going probably at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years longer than I should have in a business that was failing, that was not even paying a salary for myself. I was living in my student dorm and stuff. And it was horrible. Setting a date for yourself, setting a deadline and being like, I'm going to give it 100, 200% up until then. And then if nothing comes out, I'm going to move on. I think is kind of the perfect mix, the perfect combination in between the two. I want to come back on what you said about people saying they're just being nice to you. They don't want to reject you. They give you LOIs. I actually sort of agree with them that if people don't pay, they just tell you, yeah, sure, I'll buy it. For me, and it's something I've told a lot of entrepreneurs, until they pull out the credit card and actually give you money, it doesn't mean a lot. I guess for you, it's sort of different because you knew them, you had kind of a very deep relationship with them, and I believe it worked out in the end. But what do you think about that? Do you agree that sometimes they could be leading you on, or?
I think the people that were like signing LOIs, like we didn't have a product to sell, right? We didn't even have anything. We were showing them wireframes. So like, I couldn't be like, take out your credit card, like they'd be like, what is this girl doing? Sure. Right. So I feel like, I think it's interesting. I think all those LOIs are converting. And so they weren't lying, right?
Turns out you were right. I think so that's really good. Congrats.
Turns out we made some smart, educated guesses, and it's going.
No, that's super interesting. And by the way, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just really love thoughtful disagreement. We don't have to agree on everything. It turns out you were right. So I'm very happy to say I was wrong on this one. Again, I think you had some sort of extremely, deep and and profound understanding of what they need, which is not always the case for everybody. And I believe some of them established relationships with them as well. I've just seen so many times entrepreneurs kind of being delirious and thinking, oh yeah, sure, they're going to pay. And then they never pay. And so that's why I kind of wanted to bring this up. But again, turns out you were right. That's what matters. Yep. Congrats once again.
No, but I completely agree, right? I think that an LOI at that point was the only thing that was appropriate. As soon as we could switch to paid contracts, which was last year, we did that, right? And that's when you start validating that concept. But again, it was a swing. It was a swing and a bet. So I hear you that a lot of LOIs are
and actually signing an LOI is actually a little bit better and more engaging as a process than people usually give you a verbal agreement yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I've raised a fund. You talk to so many people who tell you, yeah, sure, I'm going to invest. And how many of those actually do convert? There's a big drop off between people saying stuff. So you actually got them to sign something. That's already kind of a step further. So going back to YC, as you know, Lobster Capital is funding exclusively YC startups. I'm a huge fan of YC. I actually was in the new YC office in San Francisco a couple of days ago in the Dock Patch. It's really cool. And so tell us a little bit about YC. Was it your first application? I believe it was in that case. Huge congrats. But what was the experience there like for you? I believe you and Kara went to San Francisco for the batch. Kind of tell me a little bit of the story of how it went.
Yeah, it was very full on is the best way to describe it. You are really firing on all cylinders during Y Combinator. We loved it. It was, for us, a very transformational period because it was the first money into the company. And so it was the first time that we could almost pour gas on our flames, right? And start paying for certain API costs and actually finish the product. It allowed us to complete our vision and get into market. And so for us, it lit a complete fire. We moved out to San Francisco. We moved into a 2-bedroom Airbnb that literally just had a sliding door between us. So so funny. If she was watching a TikTok video in bed, I'd be giggling, being I watched that one yesterday. We were on top of each other. But it felt like old days when we grew up at Sleepaway Camp together. So it was, we would have breakfast, lunch, dinner. We very rarely left the apartment. We were grinding. I was, the first 8 weeks is sales focused and product focused. And then I quickly shifted into fundraising gear. And Kara just stayed with her hands on her keyboard, coding. So, we had incredible group partners. We're still really in touch with them. I was in San Francisco 2 weeks ago at the new office, which is beautiful, and got to sit down with them again and just touch base. And I owe YC everything.
Wow, that's cool. It's a big testament. I love that. I mean, again, I'm always so surprised when people say, YC is not for everyone, or YC was not worth it for XY company and blah, blah, blah. anyway, we don't have to, everyone knows about YC, so
Yeah.
that's fine. And so just to confirm, it was your first application, right? Wow.
It was our
Some
first
people apply like
application,
10 times.
And I know. It was pretty insane, our story, in that we applied after the deadline, about 2 weeks before summer 23
Wow.
started. Like, it was a total Hail Mary. And we ended up moving to San Francisco like 4 or 5 days later. Like, we got in like 24 hours later and it was like.
They really wanted you, huh?
It happened I mean, I'll never understand, right? Some people just, like, I think it's one of those things where there's like an expression where it's like luck favors the prepared, right? We
That's
were
exactly
so
it.
prepared.
Yeah. Luck favors the prepared.
It wasn't like we had shown up it was my 150th pitch. So I had it down pat, right? And so many things had to align to make that happen, but it wasn't for lack of like struggle, misery, stress, doubt. It kind of all just compounded into that moment.
That's really cool. And by the way, I want to kind of double click on that as well before we move on to something else. You mentioned you had 140 calls and you had 149 no's. And how do you stay motivated? So I'm doing a little bit of coaching for emerging managers raising their first fund. And this is sort of exactly what I tell them. I tell them, you're going to get so many no's. That's part of the job. But you got to bring your energy level. You got to bring your A game. You got to bring your positivity, your enthusiasm to this every single call, because you never know. A no leaves you exactly where you are. It doesn't make you go backwards, but every yes actually makes you go forward. And so what I tell them, my technique is just kind of decide that you're going to be optimistic and positive, and just don't even worry about getting no's. A no is actually a service. It allows you to move on faster. So, but what's your technique? It seems you've also cracked something in that aspect to be able to pitch relentlessly so many times.
I think part of it is like being a delusional founder who had like complete and total confidence in what I'm building. And I credit that to being as close to my customers as I am. Like, I know this is needed. I know. So like any investor that never touches construction tech and uses a pitch with me to learn about construction, like, I'm going to have to convince them, right? And so I think something that I implemented towards the end was when there were days and days in a row where I was in pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching, I would spend one full day with my customers, right? I would like go out, and even if they weren't customers yet, but I would go onto job sites and reinvigorate myself on the problem space and re-ground myself in why I'm doing this. This is beyond me. This is for the betterment of an entire industry that's been overlooked for forever, right? And for the working class, the people that need their money the most, who are paycheck to paycheck, this is for them, right? It's beyond my own metrics of like what success.
Cool. You just go out and kind of have a day off to recharge the batteries and reiterate your conviction on the space. I like that very much. Okay. You just talked about people who need the money the most. And so I want to kind of go back to our initial topic, leave YC behind us, sadly, and talk a little bit about the labor shortage and the gig economy. You said that basically, I believe that's what you said, some construction workers leave and go do Uber, do Doordash because they want the instant payout. And with trade, you're allowing them to have the same benefits. Do you see trade kind of, because when we think of the gig economy, we don't think of construction workers. We do think of Uber and Doordash. Do you think those two with trade are going to become one and the same and mix? Do you think all the construction workers become part of the gig economy as well?
No, I don't think that we're trying to like ignite the gig economy. I think we're trying to like take the gig economy, not down, that's aggressive, but like shift priorities back towards, instead of working for the day, work towards a career, right? Like in construction, when you join an apprenticeship at a trade school, you're making like $30, $40 an hour, which is potentially comparable to what you're making at an Uber. But when you invest and you grow within the trades and you grow from apprentice to journeyman to contractor all the way up, to superintendent, whatever that may be, you can be making $100, $120 an hour. And so, getting involved early and building a career in construction in the trades is so much more viable, right? But like when you're fresh out of school, the short-term opportunity of what's immediately in front of you is money and money quickly, right? And so there's like this short-sighted nature to the gig economy. It is exactly that. It's a gig. It's not a career. And so I think we're trying to like bring that passion back and almost like re-educate this new generation that's so tuned in to instant gratification everywhere they go, right? Where it's like, how can we mock some of those patterns that they're being drawn into and by, and bring that into an industry where like they can actually like invest for the next 30, 40 years. I think it's like, it's reframing it for them, right? It's putting it in words that they understand or like in behaviors that they understand, right? This is a generation that grew up on Venmo and Uber, right? And so it's like, how can we like bring that to an industry that's seen very little innovation in the last few decades?
Interesting. Yeah, no, I agree. That's awesome. I mean, it's kind of a mission bigger than yourself. And that's so cool when a company really kind of embodies something huge and something powerful. Switching gears again to entrepreneurs listening to us, you fundraised successfully. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit, or tell me or tell everyone about your experience fundraising, and maybe like one or two advice you'd give to someone who's trying to fundraise right now?
Yeah, I say this is like the advice I give anytime I'm asked, because it was the most true for my experience, which was believe the no, don't believe the why. So many people are going to say no. And so many people are going to give you reasons that are easier to deliver than the actual reason, or simply they don't understand what you're doing. And they'll kind of send you on a wild goose chase of, you're too early, or, your market's too small, or, your pricing is off. Like, when someone brings up pricing at a pre-seed seed raise, you should just, it's not the right person for you. So there's a million reasons that they can give you. And I think that it's up to the founder to keep grounding themselves, right, in the mission and what they're building. So yeah, I'd say that's a big one. Believe the no, don't believe the why. And I think feeding into the second is like spend time with your customers, right? Like they have all your answers, not venture capitalists. And just continue to go back to them and reground yourself, and sleep a lot, drink a lot of water.
Cool. I like that.
Set breaks in between your pitches. Don't go back to back. I made that mistake, and you get just blurry. And yeah, give yourself little breaks, 15-minute walks in the sun to kind of reset in between.
That's really cool. I like that very much. And yeah, no one tells you about sleeping and drinking, but that's actually super, super important. Believe the no's and believe the whys. And then speaking to your customers. So many entrepreneurs just don't do it or don't do it enough. That's something YC tells you to do a lot as well, which I love again in YC. That's huge.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, what are you excited about for trade? What's coming, and what's your vision for the coming years?
The vision is really, we are hunkering down. We've got a set amount of runway to hit really measurable goals that will get us to our Series A. We are building out the team, and it's amazing the people that are coming to trade. Like they're reaching out to us, like inbound, to work here because they believe so much in what we're building. It's like, I pinch myself every single day. This was once like a vision on my ceiling, and now we have an office. I'm here. I have a team. Everyone is like super focused around the same goals, right? Which is at this point, customer success. Like that is, we wake up every single day being like, how can we make our customers happy? And we are listening to them. The feedback loop is super tight. So we have our initial customers, and now we are just like iterating, bettering, strengthening our customer success, motion, and it's really, this is like the earliest days of company formation, right? Like building culture, building team, building mission. I'm enjoying every minute, despite the
It
tough
sounds
moments.
awesome. It makes me want to be here. It sounds really, really cool.
Come
Yeah,
on by
I will.
anytime.
I will. Is there either book or quote that has been sticking with you for a very, very long time that you keep coming back to, that has a big impact on your life and ideally your entrepreneurial life?
No risk, no reward. It's a quote.
Pretty cool.
I think it's something I live by. You got to jump. You got to do it. And on the other side is usually beautiful. So, I think that like I've been in startups for the last 5.5 years. Wouldn't do it any other way.
That's really cool. So many people live in fear and end up having regrets. So, no risk, no reward.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's simple yet super powerful. If people want to learn more about you or about trade, where can they find you online?
Yeah, I'm always posting on LinkedIn. I wish I could post less, but we have to stay out there. So Anna Berger on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. Starting to share some content on TikTok, but it's a fight with myself to do it. So, but bringing people into the behind the scenes of like the earliest days of company formation. So I'm all over the place.
On
you can find
TikTok,
me.
I'll write you a message after this. I have someone that you should talk to for TikTok.
Yeah. Sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with me today and sharing everything. It was awesome to have you.
Thank you so much. So fun. So great to catch up.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe for more conversations like this. And please don't forget to rate us, leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, on the Lobster Talk, stay bold, stay curious, and remember, those big ideas start somewhere.